Hello everyone and welcome to Tim's Tutorials. My name is Tim and I have been teaching English for over 20 years, and today I'm going to be sharing with you a technique which can drastically improve the quality of your writing. And as you can see, it's about semicolons. Semicolons may not sound particularly exciting to you. I'm hoping that by the end of this tutorial you will be excited about using them, because they are a really effective way to increase your grade if you are a student, and to, as I say, to increase the quality of your writing in general. Let me explain more. SPaG, what does this stand for? SPaG. You may know this already, but if you don't, it stands for spelling, punctuation and grammar. Now, this is really significant because these three things now have an actual percentage. They are worth points, and these points can be taken away from you. And they are worth between 5 and 12% of your final grade. Now, this is huge because this is the difference at least between 2 grades, if not 3. This could be the difference between an A minus and a C plus, or an A and a C, in other words. So it's really worth making an effort not to lose any of these points, and in fact to pick up as many as possible. And it's worth this amount for not only English literature, but also history, geography and religious studies as well. So it's really in your interest to watch this tutorial and find out how I can help you to get these points. So the objectives of this tutorial, there are 3 of them. First one is to understand what a semicolon is. Secondly, when to use one. And thirdly, why to use one. So we'll review these objectives at the end of this tutorial. So let's go for the first one. What is a semicolon? Now, not to be confused with a colon, which is a dot on top of a dot. A semicolon is a full stop on top of a comma. Now, this isn't a coincidence. This is actually very useful, because a semicolon represents a pause which is longer than a comma but shorter than a full stop. So that'll help you to remember, and this will tie in nicely with what we go into next. So when to use a semicolon? Now, you use them to link 2 kind of shorter sentences which have a linked meaning in order to make one longer, more impressive looking sentence. And it's actually very, very easy to do. Example 1. It rained all day yesterday. We decided to postpone our picnic. That's really straightforward. So those are definitely 2 complete sentences. They make perfect sense grammatically. Therefore, we can connect them using a semicolon, like this. Put the semicolon in, and then all you're doing is you're changing the capital W to a small w, because it's now one complete sentence. Now, this looks a lot more impressive than just having these 2 sentences. Now you have one coherent sentence which uses this impressive semicolon. And the purpose of the semicolon is to show that there is a link between them. What is the link between those 2 sentences? It's obvious. It's cause and effect. The first part is the reason for the second part. And if you wanted to really spell this out, to clarify it, kind of spoon feed the reader, you could say therefore. But it's actually not necessary. In fact, I think it looks better without. Because what you're doing is you're getting the reader to make that connection by themselves, and that engages them more. That gets them to think for themselves. So the first part, that's why they decided to postpone. Okay, so let's look at the next example now. This is taken from the play An Inspector Calls, and this is, if you're familiar with it, that's great. If not, don't worry, it's not essential in order to understand this example. So, Eric and Sheila accept responsibility for their actions towards Eva Smith. Mr. and Mrs. Burling do not. So again, you have two separate sentences. They make perfect sense. However, they could be combined because there is a connection between them. What is that connection? So this is a contrast. This shows the difference between the people. So you have the younger generation, Eric and Sheila, and the older generation, Mr. and Mrs. Burling, reacting very differently towards the death of Eva Smith. So you could use a semicolon to combine them. You could simply, that's the only change you have to make, because we keep the capital M of Mr. because it's a title. And you're showing the link there. This is a contrast between the younger generation and the older generation. And if you wanted to spell it out, you could. You could say however, because however is a contrasting word. It means the same as but. And I forgot to mention in the previous example of it rained all day yesterday, therefore we decided to postpone our picnic. Therefore means the same as so. However means the same as but. So and but are what we call conjunctions, and they're very simple words, so we can't use them after a semicolon because semicolon is too long a pause. You could use so and but after a comma, but after a semicolon you have to use a more formal sounding word, so therefore and however fit the bill. Okay, let's move on. Example 3. This time the theme is taken from a language paper, and the topic is about school uniforms, and these sentences reflect the opinion that school uniforms should be banned. So, allowing students to wear their own clothes to school gives them an opportunity to think for themselves. It also encourages them to express their creativity. Right, so these are longer sentences, but they're not so long that we can't combine them. And best way to combine them, you've guessed it, is to use a semicolon again. And this time we're changing the capital I to a little I because it's all now the same sentence. So what is the link between these two? Now they are independent clauses. They're not two sentences because they're now one sentence, but they could be separate sentences because they were. So they're independent clauses. What's the link? This time it's not cause and effect, it's not contrasting, it's adding information, it's enhancing the point. So this time we're not going to use therefore or however, we're going to use a conjunctive adverb which represents adding more information. So we're going to, well, we could say additionally, but here what I've said is in addition. So actually this isn't a conjunctive adverb. It's what we call a transitional phrase, but it basically has the same function as a conjunctive adverb. It's two words, in addition. So it's like a phrase. But if it was one word, it would be additionally. So we could use them both. I just think in addition sounds a bit better. That's just my personal preference. And I've put a little comma after in addition because I would pause slightly after saying that. And actually, if I go back to example 2, I did the same thing with however. I put a comma after it because, again, I would pause slightly there. I would say, however, Mr. and Mrs. Burling do not. So it sounds a bit more emphatic, like I'm making the point. But going back to the first example here, therefore we decided to postpone our picnic, I wouldn't pause after that, so I didn't put a comma there. Okay, so where were we? Yeah, here. So combining the two sentences, making one, independent clause is separated by a semicolon and a transitional phrase. So the rule of thumb here is that if you're going to use a semicolon, you should say a more formal sounding word or phrase like therefore, however, in addition. Those are the examples. But they have the same meaning as so, but, and. The difference is that we would use so, but, and after a comma because they represent a shorter pause. But a longer pause with a semicolon needs to be followed by a more formal sounding phrase. So just remember that. Okay, so have we completed our objectives to understand what a semicolon is? If you remember, it's a full stop on top of a comma because it represents a pause which is longer than a comma but shorter than a full stop. When to use one? Use one to connect two complete sentences with a linked meaning to make one complete sentence. And why to use one? Simply because it makes your writing look better. By making longer sentences, you are showing that you have got a good handle on sentence structure, that you're not afraid to make longer sentences and to do so correctly. And semicolons are a very subtle and effective way of making your sentences longer, making your sentences and ideas flow more nicely, and you are engaging the reader. You're getting them to think about the connection between your sentences. That is, if you're not using any connecting words, you get them to do the thinking. And it just looks better overall. And that has got to be worth between 5 and 12% of that final grade. And so it makes all the sense in the world to get using them and give yourself maximum chance to get that top grade. So, thank you for watching. I hope you found this tutorial helpful and enjoyable. And feel free to visit my Facebook page, which is Tim's Online Proofreading, and give that a thumbs up. And if you have any essays, coursework, anything business related, anything that you want me to look over and check and edit just to make sure that it makes perfect sense grammatically, structurally, with correct punctuation, just to give it that wow factor, then send it to me and I'll fix it for you. Thanks again for watching. Bye for now.